This is straight up crazy, okay? I've been studying this CERN topic, and what's interesting about it is it kind of correlates to another video I did recently about the Great Pyramid. And sort of my evidence is that the Great Pyramid is basically above the bottomless pit. Not in our four dimensions, of course, but maybe one of those 6 or 7 other dimensions that we know exist according to theoretical physics, string theory. I just had this wild notion. Maybe CERN is their testing ground. I was thinking at first maybe it was just their testing ground for opening these certain dimensions that they couldn't get to via standard occult practices. Okay, in general occult practices, they can reach some of these dimensions and are able to reach these other entities, which are basically fallen angels or Nephilim, spirits, disembodied spirits of giants, things of this nature, right? Which have been left on the earth according to the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Enoch, and a couple other ancient books like Genesis, Apocryphon, etc., etc. So these demons, which were at once embodied beings that were the offspring of the fallen angels mating with humans, according to Genesis 6, these spirits still are within our realm, but they're not in material form. And I believe that the spiritual realm is in one or more of these dimensions that fold in on themselves. These dimensions that we don't know much about. We know about the 4 dimensions, length, width, height, and time. And we know a little bit about these 6 or 7 other dimensions. We know that they're spatial. We know that they fold in on themselves. So they're not like length, width, or height. So with that being said, what I'm saying is the spiritual realm is in one or more of these dimensions we don't know much about. And what I'm thinking, this is my theory, is that Azazel, who is in the bottomless pit mentioned in Revelation, just so happens to be in a couple other dimensions which they can't get to. In other words, these demons and fallen angels that weren't cast into the bottomless pit, the ones that didn't have the punishment mentioned in the Book of Enoch, which Jude, by the way, tells us to read the Book of Enoch. But the point is that I don't believe they can access it because this bottomless pit is sealed. And it says that the devil comes down in great wrath with the keys to open the bottomless pit. So what I'm thinking is that that Azazel, his buddies, I guess you would call them, Azazel and some of the worst demons, according to the Book of Jubilees, 90% of the demons were put in the bottomless pit. Only the 10% of the not so bad ones were left on earth. So if you can imagine, you have the worst of them in this bottomless pit. Some of the main leaders, 200 fallen angels that came down on Mount Hermon, are in this bottomless pit. In another realm, another dimension. Okay, a dimension that the devil himself can't get to. At least not yet. But it says he's given the keys to the bottomless pit. So maybe these keys happen to be CERN, and that they're trying to crack the code to open these dimensions that they can't do in a standard form. Obviously, a standard form would be normal occultic practices where you can obviously access Lucifer and the ones that haven't been thrown in the bottomless pit. But what about the ones that have? The ones that he wants to release in the end times. Now, what's interesting about the pyramid is we see this symbol used everywhere in culture. You might be familiar with this symbol here on the back of the dollar bill. It's the Great Pyramid with the all-seeing eye. And what is this all-seeing eye? A lot of people don't even know that. It's the all-seeing eye of Tammuz. Who is Tammuz? Nimrod and Semiramis, his mother, who also was his wife, had a child named Tammuz. Which I don't want to get into a lot of detail about this, but this is the founding of the mystery religions from the Tower of Babel. Nimrod built the Tower of Babel. So you had this false trinity, a father, a mother, and a son, and the eye of Tammuz would be the son, or the false Christ, the false Jesus, the Antichrist. And I believe this Antichrist is represented in Azazel in the bottomless pit below the Great Pyramid. This is why people like Aleister Crowley and a lot of very prominent military figures and rulers in the past, in the ancient past, and not so distant past, have gone to the Great Pyramid, for occultic reasons. Even George H.W. Bush went there for the crowning of the stone. And there's a lot of New Agers that go there as well for what we would call occultic wisdom. And we know Aleister Crowley got his start there as well. And in this video here, I'm going to cover sort of evidences from various places I found, various other YouTubers that are, studying this topic and some of the things they've uncovered and other evidences. And I just kind of wanted to point out, this is my theory on it, and this is sort of some of the stuff that kind of backs up what my theory is. Basically this is the devil's money, as you can see. Obviously this is New World Order right there. We got the basically the devil, the Antichrist right there on top of the Great Pyramid, and just happened to have CERN lined right up with the Great Pyramid and with the center point of the landmass of North America, with the CN Tower, Waco, Texas, and actually a host of other things. This actually goes quite in depth. I'm going to put this video right after this one here so you can kind of see how ridiculously all these things line up. And there's actually several other things that line up as well with it. But I just thought it was quite intriguing how the Great Pyramid seems to be part of this whole CERN thing, the Hadron Collider. And we have all these different stories and evidences that basically fallen angels or demons show up whenever this thing is turned on. And I'm quite curious as to if they've actually cracked it yet. I'm thinking no, but maybe they're close to cracking the dimensions in which Azazel resides, and these very horrific demons. According to the Book of Jubilees, they would kill humans. Being spirits killing humans, if you can imagine that. That's why they were put there, is because they were so bad, they were so malicious. So if you could imagine basically hell on earth when these things are released. And this is kind of what I've been thinking the end times is going to be, sort of like one of these scary movies on steroids. Literally everyone seeing the spiritual realm in obvious array in front of them. No longer will you have atheists. Let's just put it that way.
Have you ever noticed how a good part of the North American coastline follows a circle? Or that South America is shaped like a triangle and a rectangle, which turn out to combine into a Fibonacci spiral? This landscape geometry is based on exact proportions of the Earth's circumference, on the deepest place on Earth, and, in a very precise way, on both the position and the size of the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. Consider a line running from the Great Pyramid going exactly through the center of the Large Hadron Collider. This line ends up passing within 1.3 kilometers of the Mount Carmel Center, better known as the site of the Waco siege. On this site, 76 people died on April 19, 1993, when their compound was burned after a 51-day standoff with the authorities. Waco is noteworthy along this CERN line because it is situated such that its precise location defines the center of the North American circle by being at an exact golden ratio point along the circle's radius, which is 2,160 nautical miles, or precisely 1/10 of the Earth's circumference. Creating an analog 2,160 nautical mile circle on the center of the Large Hadron Collider defines a bisector between North America and Europe. This continental bisector intersects with another great circle that runs down the east coast of South America and through the deepest part of O'Higgins San Martin Lake, which is the deepest in South America and the 5th deepest in the world. The other point defining this great circle is Challenger Deep, the deepest spot on Earth. Notice how it also passes very close to CERN. Taking a closer look at the Large Hadron Collider for a moment, we lay out a circle of 86,400 foot circumference centered on the Large Hadron Collider, and see that it passes through all 4 of the collision points along the accelerator where the massive detectors are located. We define a vesica Pisces by laying out the same sized circle passing through the center of the LHC and aligned with our Great Pyramid to Waco, Texas line. This geometry syncs up with a larger circle that nestles between the vesica Pisces and the Challenger Deep line we defined before looking closer at CERN. This circle has an exact circumference of 216 kilometers, which is continuing the fractal pattern from the continent-sized circles and the Large Hadron Collider circumference. To be clear, the circle is depicted as being exactly tangent to the line, but there's actually a few kilometers of play with this particular alignment. While the Challenger Deep end is anchored by a precise Wikipedia point, the O'Higgins-San Martin end is a deep area and is not a point. The number 216 resonates across both terrestrial and celestial realms. The Earth's circumference, for example, is 21,600 nautical miles. We see that the Sun is 864,000 miles in diameter, and the Moon is 2,160 miles across. 864 is a multiple of 216. There are also 86,400 seconds in a day, reflecting the 2016 resonance into the temporal. Now, many have commented on how CERN's logo seems to contain 3 sixes. Perhaps that is true given that 6 times 6 times 6 equals 216. Following through, we see that a vesica Pisces of sorts is left once the sixes are taken away. Potent symbology, 666 coming from the vesica Pisces, considering that 666 is well known as the number of man. Again, extreme geography is playing into the mix with Mont Blanc, the highest peak in Europe, being 7 kilometers from our world deep line. Zooming out, we can see how Europe and Africa follow our alignments and how the Challenger Deep line almost exactly separates Europe and Africa at the Strait of Gibraltar. The line passes within 4 kilometers of the African Pillar of Hercules. The intersection of the CERN/North America Vesica Pisces bisector and the Challenger Deep line define a precise location on the Earth from which we'll lay out the rest of the geometry in this video. The coastline of South America follows 3 great circles, each having a circumference of 21,600 nautical miles equal to that of the Earth. These 3 great circles form a wedge that is 1/8 of the world's circumference by 1/4 of the Earth's circumference. Notice how this lays out an equator along the north edge and a pole at the south apex. Bisect the wedge and define another perpendicular pole. Sweep out a line about this pole to the Ahu Akivi Moe on Easter Island. These 7 statues face sunset on each equinox and are the only astronomically precise ancient feature on the island. This alignment passes through the southern tip of South America and precisely past Cape Horn, the most southerly spot in South America. We'll sweep out another line around our east pole to the region where the circle rounds into the straight edge of Chile's east coast, thus completing a box around the top of South America. Now divide the top edge into a golden ratio, and by adding a circle, we see that the box is actually a golden rectangle in some sense. Copying this circle down will create another golden section line. Sweeping out from the end of this to exactly 45 degrees, or 1/8 of 360 degrees, we see that the west coast of South America is aligned, and that we have another fractal of 216. Expanding this pattern implies a Fibonacci spiral. One final line that creates another golden ratio division provides the backbone on which the North and South America connector sits. Adding back in our North America circle with its CERN to Waco bisector, we see that this phi connector comes within 10.4 kilometers of where the CERN to Waco line intersects the circle. So one last line, if you recall the line we just drew connecting North America to South America at the phi division of the upper portion of South America. If you do one perpendicular to that, it goes right through the mouth of the Amazon and continues on to Stonehenge within 13.2 kilometers. So here we have Easter Island and Stonehenge playing a role in laying out, or however you want to put it, the South American continent. And it just, you know, from what I've seen in the research, this kind of thing, it just goes on and on and on. And so if you're interested, perhaps consider going to bedrockgeometry.com and signing up for the newsletter. And yeah, and I'll fire you some stuff, some secret stuff. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it.
So of course this all has to do with CERN, and even on CERN's logo, as many have exposed as well, you've got the 666 spinning. We see CERN being used by even heavy metal bands like Megadeth. You've got Super Collider there, and this is CERN being shown on the album cover. And as I said, it's to do with the transfiguration of the planet. It's the false Jesus Sananda leeching off the back of Christ, because as you know, some of you may know, Christ, the transfiguration was to do with Christ, and he temporarily formed a bridge to the Father in the Bible, and this is obviously the inversion of that. It's the transfiguration of their kingdom. It's the birthing of hell on earth. It's the bridge from hell to earth, from the abyss to earth, to break loose the ones that are imprisoned, the spirits, the fallen, as the Bible all describes. And some great insight into the Book of Enoch and different things like that were taken out of the Bible. It describes these things very well. And so you see a few different artists using this. Here we've got one called Timeless 2013, and at the top of the pyramid on the capstone you've got the artist coming out of the smoke of the pit, like in Revelation, and you've got CERN surrounding. It's to do with this energy event, just like the Red Bull, the two bulls collision. And of course I'm sure many of you have heard of the deity Cernunnos, which is the Lord of the Earth, the Green Man. And of course this is all about going green. It's about the recycle, the go green, green age, Lucifer, Luciferian age. It's to do with the Cernunnos, and it's to do with the time change, and it's to do with the transfiguration of the planet into the golden age, which is the New World Order, age of Aquarius, and the age of Saturn. And that is what they want to happen. And this is the satanic plan, if you like.
Are you serious? Are you serious? Mike from around the world will be our guest today. We're in the month of March. Today's March 10th. This Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th. The Illuminati loves that day. the CERN is going to be fired up. They will slowly ramp it up, headed toward the spring equinox, the total eclipse of the sun, a solar eclipse over Europe. And that is the day they want to ramp the CERN up to its maximum, almost the speed of light, where they can collide these protons and open a black hole. Demon spirits may be seen loose around Geneva, Switzerland, as it did last time, and they only opened this thing up 75% back on December 21st, 2012. What will happen? Look, Mike from Around the World has got some very important information about the CERN that he's going to share with us live today. Let me give you a little bit of what we talked about yesterday, setting up for today's broadcast.
About something, it's a really good topic you had today concerning this, the urgency that we're in, and concerning CERN, not so much for the machinery, but the intent. And this probably won't be long enough to say it, but there's a film coming out March 14th called Symmetry. To give you an idea of this film, it was made specifically for CERN. It's also a message. Here's one of the captions in the film that people will find in the film as it's released. It will ultimately ask if one loves the particle more than himself. And then they ask, would you become one with the particle? Really? Yeah. And so of course, it would take a little more time to. But that's one of the captions in the film. Go ahead.
The name of the film you say is Symmetry. Is that with a C?
Symmetry. Symmetry.
Okay. Now, it's going to be released in theaters across the country?
Well, it's March 14th by the Sign Dance Film Festival.
Okay.
And it's a very, they allowed this to be filmed inside of CERN. So it's not, it's not just an ordinary film. It's more of an intention. The scientists were very collaborative in this film. They did work and help produce this film, and it has an intent. It has an announcement. If a person, and it's not conspiracy theory, this is how science seems to edify itself. But they have an intent here. It's something very real. Something, yes.
Now they're releasing that the same time that CERN is being fired up.
Yeah, it's in that neighborhood, and so, if I had more time, I'd go into detail. But
Go ahead,
I just needed to give you that update because I know a lot of people don't know what to think about CERN, or they don't know what to think about this time that we live in.
Scientists have successfully restarted the Large Hadron Collider in an attempt to make history for the second time. 3 years ago, the huge particle smasher uncovered the Higgs boson, an elementary particle that gives other particles mass. Now they hope a more powerful version of the collider might discover dark matter and even extra dimensions in space.
Whoa. Now they're hoping it might discover dark matter and even extra dimensions in space. Interesting that they tell you at school that there's nothing else, but you came from a monkey and there's nothing else, and then suddenly they're coming out in the mainstream media and just saying, yeah, there might be extra dimensions.
Correspondent Palab Ghosh explains.
Bring one bucket, one.
An anxious wait for the start of a new era in physics.
Injection. Dumping.
Scientists here are thrilled as they send subatomic particles around the Large Hadron Collider for the first time in 2.5 years. Deep under the Swiss-French border, the circular accelerator is the size of a small railway line. Tiny particles whiz round 11,000 times every second, close to the speed of light. When they collide, they recreate particles that existed at the very beginning of the universe. These hold the key to how it began and how it all works.
The key, eh?
In 2012, Peter Higgs wiped away a tear after researchers discovered the particle named after him. It was hailed as one of the most significant discoveries in science. Since then,
Of course, when they say the God particle, they believe, or their God is Lucifer, of knowledge, which is what science is all about anyway. So when they talk about the God particle, it's nothing to do with the true Father of everything.
Is that I was just looking it up today, and it says that because I'm waiting for this day of when it's going to reboot, which I think is March 15th. Anyways, there's this operatic dance performance filmed inside CERN, and so I was just scanning through this article, and these people seem to be doing this dance ritual inside the thing, and there's this guy who's supposed to be this epic producer and all this different stuff, but look in this film, they got one of the things that I always say in these occultic rituals is they always do them within a circle. And it's so, I guess it's so they can keep the energy within. But, this guy looks like, I don't even know, a cult member, and this girl's in it. It's just really weird to me, especially when this stuff is being, these abstract films are being built around this proton-hadron collider. Whatever you want to think of it. I believe it gets even weirder because in this last little paragraph here, it says the movie's called Symmetry, or this ritual, or whatever they're doing, this dance movie. It says will premiere in the Amsterdam Eye Film Museum on March 14, 2015. So we're seeing this eye everywhere. It's on the $1 bill. It's just in all sorts of entertainment and incorporated into all the movies and all this different stuff. It's very important. And so I don't know if people know what it is or if it's not, but like I say, it really does look like it comes from, and it's has an affiliation to John Dee's Monas Hieroglyphica and this demon in it. And there's been a lot of it could be the Eye of Ra, and people have a different perceptions or whatever, but you go and look up this eye thing, and again, it's a symbol at this eye museum or whatever, the Eye Institute in the Netherlands. Anyways, is a Dutch archive museum, Amsterdam, and all this stuff. So there's this huge symbology going on with all this different stuff, and the last thing I really want to talk about here is the LHC restart. We want to break physics, people are saying. These scientists have honestly lost their minds, in my opinion. I'm just looking through these quotes here. As the Large Hadron Collider, LHC, gears up for its revamped second run, hurling particles together with more energy than ever before, physicists are impatient. They want this next round of collisions to shake their discipline to its core. And so I don't even know if this is the place where they're saying they've found the God particle, all this weird stuff. Everything unravels. It's just really weird what's going on here, and I think humanity as a whole should be worried. This is almost stuff of biblical proportions. Getting back to H.P. Lovecraft and all of these deities that I'm talking about that kind of exist in this world of the abyss. I think H.P. Lovecraft summed this up, and he calls them the old ones, and he created a ton of them in his books. There are a ton of these different deities, and there it says the old ones. But as you can see here, this is a list of all these different ones, and you can scan through it yourself. I'm not going to read them all right now because there's so many. But they're just, throughout his works, he talks about, that's what he does in his stories. He kind of warns humanity about what can happen with all this stuff, what its progression involves, and what I mean by that is it ties in with kind of where the technology is going as well, because, the technology goes hand in hand with these people doing these occultic rituals. And, there's just a bunch of different creatures. But eventually, I think all these little creatures are trying to do is, break their way into our realm of existence. Here it even says, this is what Aleister Crowley found, Lamb, the Grey, an alien entity, Grey aliens dwelling in the dark side of planet Mars. So, this is some pretty crazy stuff. And I think, not Aleister Crowley, I think H.P. Lovecraft was trying to warn us. And like I say, he just gives a great amount of details about this stuff. And this was a guy that really didn't get any credit, like I say. It's not like he was a superstar back in the day. So you can definitely tell that his popularity was watered down by those who kind of control everything. That's how it's kind of always been, I guess. But, look at all these different creatures that he talks about. Anyways, his writings are just super interesting. And what his premises in a lot of his books is super interesting as well. I'll get more into that at the very end here because it ties in with the pyramids and ultimately, this Monas Hieroglyphica, I think. But anyways, the reason that I think that H.P. Lovecraft and his writings and all this different stuff are valid, and these creatures that he talks about, is because it's kind of cross-correlated with what Aleister Crowley was doing in The Vision and the Voice. Now, if you aren't aware of The Vision and the Voice, you should go look this up as well, because this is a ritual practice or a book that Aleister Crowley wrote. I believe it was with Victor Neuberg. And while writing this book, he became possessed and all this stuff and wrote all these different chapters. And, there's all these, they call them eighth years, but these are all different kind of, each chapter represents a different entity, a different story. And like I've said before, the 13th one here is Nemo from the book Finding Nemo, or the story, the movie, or whatever it is. And so I haven't really scanned through it deeply, but, I just kind of caught that one day, but there are 30 different ones and they all have these different things. When you look at the 30th one, I was just kind of looking over this today, and it's pretty crazy what it's talking about here. It's, like I said, you can read over it yourself, but just take this paragraph. Lift up your heads, O houses of eternity, for my Father goeth forth to judge the world. One light, let it become 1,000, and one sword 10,000, that no man hide from my Father's eye in the day of judgment of my God. Let the gods hide themselves. Let the angels be troubled and flee away. For my eye of my Father is open, and the book of aeons is fallen. And then down at the bottom here, I kind of talked about this other stuff that round Saturn's eye, or sorry if I keep getting that name wrong, but he was talking about this stuff with Saturn and all this different stuff in the planets, and it says here, the end, the end, the end. For the eye of Shiva he hath opened, the universe is naked to him. For the aeon of Saturn leaned towards the bosom of death. So what I believe Aleister Crowley is talking about in this last aeon of whatever it is here. There seems to be almost a judgment coming against Christianity once this portal gets opened, and anybody that really buys into Christianity or God, this is what they're talking about in terms of us being, well, I'm not fully a Christian, but I'm on my way. But, there's a judgment coming against the good people of planet Earth is what I'm getting at, and it's coming from this horrible deity. And it could be a bunch of them, and I think the gates of hell really are about to open. It's pretty crazy times that we're living in, Like I say, some of it's exciting to talk about, but at the same time, if this actually happens, this is going to be hell on earth.
Now, why am I bringing this up? Because, well, I just read an article today that claims that Homer Simpson predicted the mass, the subatomic mass of the Higgs boson particle, of course, which is extremely related to CERN. In fact, it has everything to do with CERN, right? CERN is the actual machine that gave us the so-called proof that this particle exists. It's well known in pop culture as the so-called God particle. Of course, that is absurd to label a particle God, but hey, I digress. Yeah, and The Simpsons, Homer Simpson, okay, predicted the mass of this particle in 1998, long before it was even conceived. How is that possible? How is that possible? Well, I'll tell you how it's possible, because The Simpsons, it's riddled with predictive programming. The New World Order throws things in your face decades before. In some cases, they come to fruition here in reality. Like in 1997, they predicted 9/11, and if you can't see that this is... you can't just... That's not a coincidence, folks. If you think this is a coincidence, that in 1997, they showed this in one of the episodes, you're out of your mind, okay? You're the crazy one if you think this is a coincidence. 9/11, New York, and the 11 is obviously the Twin Towers. Yeah, okay. And then also you have the Ebola predicted as well. This is a little less definitive, but if you look at the colors here, the Ebola green, the neon green, that gives it away. And this episode, I believe, was sometime during the 1990s. It was aired, and they predict the Ebola virus, and they allude it to the color neon green. And if you look at the recent Ebola outbreak, the so-called worst Ebola outbreak ever, it was riddled with this neon green programming. Simpsons predicted it. That, 9/11. And, well, if you look at this BuzzFeed article from, just 2013, they go on to detail 21 times that The Simpsons bizarrely predicted the future. And they don't even include Ebola in 9/11, but there's 21 other instances here in which The Simpsons bizarrely predicted the future. Yes, all meant to happen. And this Higgs boson, CERN reference from 1998, you better believe, is in with the whole bunch. And I find it extremely curious that this article from Daily Mail revealing this predictive programming comes out just weeks before the crazy, psychotic, satanic elite plan to turn on the LHC, CERN, again. And they want to recreate the Big Bang.
Now, on that front, there have been people that have stated, you guys are just blowing things out of proportion. Why bring religion into science and stuff like that? Now, here's the deal with CERN and the Large Hadron Collider. Science itself has always been an outworking of the occult. In fact, if you watch Age of Deceit 2, Alchemy and the Rise of the Beast Image, I show how Hermeticism and alchemy have been at the heart of scientific breakthroughs throughout history. And those people that were known to make these breakthroughs, some of them openly admit that they got their information from not just Hermeticism, but spiritual beings and stuff. So there's nothing new about spirituality and science being one and the same, so to speak. Now, just to give more evidence that what CERN is doing is, in fact, opening portals or gateways into what appears to be other dimensions. There is an article by my good friend Josh Peck, who posted something called The Coming Technocalypse, CERN, Quantum Computing, and Particle Teleportation. Now, if you want to know how quantum physics in general is best explained by the biblical worldview, definitely check out Josh Peck's book, Quantum Creation. He gets into it. I mean, it's just quite amazing the way scientists avoid the obvious, that the universe is held together by God speaking it into existence. In fact, Josh shows in his book, Quantum Creation, that God is speaking at this very moment to keep creation together, which is quite amazing. So anyway, that being said, he recently came out with a book called Cherubim Chariots. We also have an interview on Canary Cry Radio. It's a 3-hour conversation. An hour and a half of it is good content. The rest of it is just silly banter. If you are a fan of the show Canary Cry Radio, you might enjoy it. Otherwise, you may think we are the most annoying people in the universe. So there's a link to that episode if you guys want to check it out. It also has time codes in case you want to skip through all the banter and get to the content. But in any case, he posted this article and he documented a few of the quotes made by scientists throughout the years to show and to prove that they're trying to open interdimensional portals. So this is a quote that he cited from Reuters back in 2010, quote, Guido Tonelli, spokesman for one of the CERN specialist teams monitoring operations in the vast subterranean LHC, said, probing for extra dimensions, besides length, breadth, height, and time, would become easier as the energy of the proton collision in it is increased in 2011. So again, more evidence that this is something that they are trying to do. Now, the CERN press offices itself stated, quote, as far as we know, we live in 4 dimensions, 3 of space and 1 of time. But experimentalists at the Large Hadron Collider are looking for evidence that the universe contains more than that. The existence of extra dimensions could explain some puzzling properties of the universe, end quote. And he cites several other places where it's been talked about that they are really trying to open dimensions. This is nothing new. And when it comes to mainstream entertainment, CERN has been at the center of many stories, including a movie called Decay, which is a zombie apocalypse film based on CERN. But then there's other stuff like Particle Fever that actually is a documentary. And there's movies like Angels and Demons that talk about it. But one show that was really interesting, I thought, is called Flash Forward. And in this show, something happens with the particle accelerator where the entire population on Earth all pass out. They fall asleep for 2 minutes. And during those 2 minutes, they have a vision of the future. And the entire show is leading up to that vision. And, some things come true, some things don't. But it's a very interesting way to conjure up a story. And there's another movie called Random Quest. And in that movie, there's a character who is a physicist who is knocked unconscious during an experiment at the particle accelerator, which is CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, and he wakes up and finds himself in a parallel world. And it's sort of a love story drama that's surrounding that. So there are a lot of films, a lot of things out there about CERN in science fiction already. But consider this. Somebody asked in the comment section, why would demons need a man-made machine to manifest? And, I responded to that comment, if you can find it somewhere. But basically what I said was the same thing that people have been doing for a very long time with rituals, seances, and other workings. For example, Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard. Jack Parsons being the founder of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He single-handedly changed rocketry in the world, and especially in the United States. This is the same guy that is going out into the desert with L. Ron Hubbard, who is the founder of Scientology, and performing rituals called Babylon Working, trying to invoke the Whore of Babylon. So there's nothing new about scientists trying to conjure up things through rituals. And so what the Large Hadron Collider is just a ginormous ritual machine. And that's why it is concerning.
They have, the Nazis had mediums that were apparently talking with aliens from a different planets, and then that's where NASA comes in, and they're all about space travel and all this stuff. And eventually, this satanic cult, which is being bred in California, wants to migrate to Mercury one day. And so, this is all, it all comes into play, and it all is kind of within our galaxy here, I believe. And when this stuff actually comes to light, or when, no pun intended, but when it actually happens, I think you're going to see a lot of activity happening on other planets, and you kind of are already. You're seeing stories in the news like weird clouds over certain planets or this and that. I haven't really been paying attention to it in thorough detail, but it's stuff that I've been noticing for sure. And so, when I see all this stuff happening all over the world, it kind of resonates with me because it reminds me of the pyramids that were all over the world at one point in time. Only that we know that this stuff, these are created ultimately by humans, but the prototypes aren't created by humans. Like I constantly say, these are ideas which are brought to our planet from through astral projection from a different dimension, and they were developed here, but they're not necessarily human creations or ideas. It's completely cult-like. It's absolutely unbelievable, to be honest with you. But moving forward, I want to first talk about Aleister Crowley again. I know I'm always talking about this guy, but I honestly believe he's one of the most important figures in our history, in modern human history anyways. Because, first of all, when he started doing his rituals and all this stuff, when he started writing the Book of the Law, which I'm equating to the anti-Bible, he started, it was in Egypt, which is where all this stuff started. So I'm just going to read a quick blurb here. Through the reception of the book, Crowley proclaimed the arrival of a new stage in spiritual evolution of humanity, to be known as the Aeon of Horus. The primary precept of this new Aeon is charged to do what thou wilt. And then there's even more. It says, do what you want, or love is the law, love under will. And the reason that I think that this is important, the do what you want, love under will, all this different stuff, is because it's starting to tie in with, the concept of Brave New World. Which was something that, I always kind of scoffed at. I didn't want to really talk about all this kind of stuff. But, because it's such a cliche and it's so overused, the whole Brave New World. Oh, we're living in the Brave New World and this stuff people are always saying now. But it's true. Every single aspect of what this book says is coming true, whether it be the destruction of the family or whether it be, the surveillance security state that's being put in. People are going to be free to do whatever they want, but there's not really going to be relationships, and you're just going to be a slave to the centralized one world government pretty much. And you can do whatever you want, do all this stuff, but you're going to have to do it while being surveilled and doing, you'll be forced to kind of be in that system. There's not going to be any freedom. Anyways, I want to get back to this Aleister Crowley here and talk a little further. The book contains 3 chapters, each of which was alleged to be written down in 1 hour, beginning at noon on April 8th and 9th and 10th in Cairo, Egypt. In the year of 1904, Crowley says that the author was an entity named Aiwass, whom he later referred to as his personal holy guardian angel. And this Aiwass is the alien that I've been talking about. Analogous, whatever, identical with the higher self. Anyways, I want to go down a little further and go through, this is really interesting for people, because this is where I believe the inception of the bringing back this whole pyramid Egyptian structure comes from. But I go down a little bit further, and this is very important and interesting too, because I just have this little part highlighted here, and it says, as part of the test for Rose, who was his medium, the woman he had with him, his Scarlet Woman, Crowley claimed that they visited Bullock Museum, even though that the museum had been closed in 1902, where Crowley asked her to point out an image of Horus. Much to Crowley's initial amusement, she passed by several common images of the god and went upstairs. From across the room, Rose identified Horus on the stele of Ankeneth F. on Konusu. That's my pronunciation of it anyways. Then housed under inventory number 666. Since since moved to the Egyptian Museum of Cairo, and number, this is how it's cataloged, A9422. And so the reason that this is important, and she pointed out this number 666 and all this stuff, and the reason that this is relevant with the pyramids is because the number 666, as you can see here, is the sum of the first 36 natural numbers, which means it's a triangular number. And so this is why you're seeing the pyramids and the triangles and all this different stuff everywhere, is because the triangle, and I'll talk about this in the future in different videos when I can elaborate on it a little bit better, but these are all triangular numbers, and they're super mathematical, and they're completely pertinent to kind of this Egyptian revival that we're seeing happen everywhere. You know, this is 666 is seen in CERN, it's seen in satanic rituals, it's seen everywhere. And along with the pyramid. So these are two very pertinent things that I stumbled upon, and Aleister Crowley originally found through doing these rituals, especially with his whatever Scarlet Woman Rose.
God bless you, brothers and sisters. ExposedByTruth.com. All glory to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Yeshua, HaMashiach, the one true living God, Yahweh, Jehovah, and the Holy Spirit, our Comforter, the Ruach HaKodesh. Brothers and sisters, I want to share a very interesting video with you guys. This is a show that I found on Netflix that is, I haven't seen a lot of videos on YouTube about it. Once I finished this last episode, I was simply astonished and thought I would see a plethora of videos being made about this. This series is about the return of the Nephilim, the Anunnaki. It is very, very detailed in the arrival of Nibiru. What actually astonished me was at the end of this, in this TV show, it shows Nibiru coming into our solar system and being able to be seen, no longer hid. And it is the same planet-like object that I seen in a vision that I did a video about a while ago. This series is called The Event. What caught my eye and made me want to watch it was I noticed that the E was backwards. And understanding what Aleister Crowley, one of the most evil men to ever lived, known as the Beast or 666, taught his followers, those in the law of the Leman and Theosophy, to learn to read, write, and walk into certain places backwards. He was a very demonic person, inhabited by, I believe, a legion of demons, from what I've read about this guy. But this series, and if you are a watchman on the wall, God has called you to watch and to share your visions and your research on Nibiru, the Nephilim, these aliens, which we know there are no aliens. They are demonic entities, demons, interdimensional beings, a great deception. I encourage you definitely to pray about it first, and if the Lord leads you, then watch this series. It went for 22 episodes, or 11 plus 11, or 11. It talks about the New World Order. You can see many references to the Illuminati in the Illuminati symbols. I mean, this is blatant. You talk about predictive programming, or a hidden, or some hidden esoteric black magic messages, or blatantly the powers that be showing us what's going to occur. This series has it all. It literally, the boldness left me dumbfounded. So I'm going to play. This is the last part of the last episode, episode 22. and it's called The Arrival.
We've identified the portal array in Tibet. And we know it's bringing your people here. I've told them everything I know about the portal. How do we stop it? Sophia, how do we shut it down?
Now I'm going to pause it here as well, real quick, because when they said the portal array, that reminded me of something I wanted to share with you. This portal array, and you'll see this when you watch this series, if you are led and feel that it's something that you should do, because there's certain people that shouldn't watch this because it will bring fear upon you. And our Lord is about faith and not about fear. So again, like I said, pray about it. But this portal array reminds me of CERN's portal that they are working on, building up this dark energy to open this portal to the demonic world or the abyss. And if you don't know anything about CERN, then definitely Google it and find out about it. I mean, it's extremely satanic. This thing has the fake, false god Kali. In it has 666 in the CERN logo, but they are doing the same thing as these Nephilim are trying to do in this show and open this portal to bring, quote unquote, their people